In February 2022, the world watched in disbelief as Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. This act of aggression sent shockwaves across the globe, triggering immediate condemnation and demands for accountability. The West, led by the United States and the European Union, responded swiftly with a battery of sweeping sanctions, targeting key sectors of the Russian economy. The primary aim of these sanctions was to cripple Russia's economy, weaken its ability to finance the war, and ultimately force a retreat from Ukraine. The hope was that economic pressure would compel Moscow to reconsider its actions. Initially, the impact was significant. The ruble crashed, plummeting to record lows against major currencies. Foreign companies, fearing reputational damage and financial losses, fled Russia en masse, suspending operations and withdrawing investments. Leading economists and financial analysts predicted an imminent economic collapse, forecasting a deep recession and widespread financial instability. The narrative was one of impending doom for the Russian economy. Yet, 3 years later, the situation on the ground tells a different story. Against all expectations, Russia's economy has not only survived the onslaught of sanctions, but has also shown a remarkable degree of adaptation and resilience. The Kremlin, far from being paralyzed, implemented a series of strategic countermeasures, including aggressively pivoting its energy exports towards new markets in Asia and other regions, imposing strict financial controls to stabilize the ruble and prevent capital flight, rapidly mobilizing its industrial base to support the war effort and replace lost imports, and deepening economic and political ties with non-Western nations, particularly China and India, all of which have collectively kept the war machine running and the economy afloat. This unexpected resilience raises serious questions about the long-term effectiveness of sanctions as a reliable and decisive foreign policy tool in the 21st century. A deeper understanding of Russia's survival strategy reveals crucial insights into how global power dynamics and economic relationships are rapidly shifting in this new, increasingly multipolar era. The story of Russia's economic performance is not simply one of blind defiance against the West, but rather a testament to a calculated, multi-pronged strategy designed to weather the storm and maintain its geopolitical ambitions. So, let's delve deeper and explore the key factors that have enabled Russia to sustain its war effort, even while operating under what is arguably the most extensive and coordinated sanctions regime ever imposed on a major economy. Russia's economic survival in the face of international pressure hinges almost entirely on its energy sector, specifically oil and natural gas exports. These resources are the lifeblood of the Russian economy. When Europe, historically a major consumer, began to cut off Russian oil and gas in response to geopolitical events, Moscow rapidly redirected its exports eastward, seeking new markets in Asia, a strategic pivot born out of necessity. Especially to the burgeoning economies of China and India, two nations with immense energy demands. To entice these new buyers, Russia began offering steep discounts, significantly undercutting global market prices. This pivot required the establishment of new and complex trade routes both by land and sea to facilitate the flow of energy resources. This also led to the increased reliance on shadow fleets of tankers, vessels operating outside traditional regulatory frameworks to transport oil discreetly. Furthermore, to circumvent Western sanctions, payments were increasingly made in yuan or rupees rather than US dollars or euros. This allowed Russia to bypass Western financial controls and maintain a degree of economic autonomy. As a result, India and China quickly became Russia's top energy customers, absorbing a significant portion of its oil and gas exports. This influx of revenue from Asian markets helped in replacing lost European revenue and fundamentally reshaping global energy flows, creating new dependencies and alliances. The Kremlin's steady income from these sales funds both essential social programs, maintaining domestic stability, and the ongoing war effort. While Russia earns less per barrel due to the discounts offered, the sheer volume of sales to Asia, particularly to China and India, has offset much of the financial loss incurred from the reduced per barrel price. This energy lifeline, this strategic redirection of resources, is the single most important factor, stabilizing Russia's economy and preventing the kind of collapse many in the West had anticipated. The West's expectation of a swift and decisive Russian economic collapse, fueled by sanctions and trade restrictions, proved, at least in the short term, to be premature. highlighting a miscalculation in the assessment of Russia's economic resilience. The ruble's initial collapse in 2022 sparked panic, but Russia's central bank responded with drastic measures. Strict capital controls forced exporters to convert most foreign earnings into rubles, creating artificial demand. Citizens faced limits on moving money abroad, trapping capital inside Russia. The central bank hiked interest rates to 20%, curbing inflation and speculation. Russia also demanded gas payments in rubles from unfriendly countries, further propping up its currency. By summer 2022, the ruble had rebounded, projecting stability at home. This managed currency approach reassured the public and kept inflation in check. The ruble's strength is artificial, but it's been crucial for social peace. Currency control remains a cornerstone of Russia's economic endurance. Stabilized finances allowed Russia to ramp up defense spending to Soviet-era levels. Military budgets now consume a third of government spending, fueling a boom in the defense sector. Factories run around the clock, producing tanks, shells, and drones, while state contracts and subsidies keep them afloat. This militarization has created jobs and pockets of prosperity, especially in industrial cities. However, consumer industries have suffered, and the economy is increasingly distorted, prioritizing weapons over civilian needs. The labor market is tight, with higher wages for defense workers but shortages elsewhere. This war-driven stimulus is unsustainable, mortgaging Russia's future for present conflict. The economy's growing dependency on military production will be hard to unwind. Russia is trading long-term health for short-term survival. Western sanctions were strategically designed and targeted Russia's access to advanced technology, crucial machinery, and key components necessary for modern industry. In direct response to these limitations, Moscow accelerated its program of import substitution. This initiative aimed at replacing foreign goods with domestically produced alternatives. Russian brands quickly and efficiently filled the gaps in the market. These gaps were left by departing Western companies, thereby creating a superficial sense of normalcy for the average consumer. However, the real challenge lies in the high-tech sectors. Russia still lags significantly in the production of microchips and precision tools, despite the implementation of heavy investment programs. The aviation industry serves as a critical test case. Domestic jets are gradually replacing Boeing and Airbus aircraft, but questions about quality and reliability remain. To bridge these critical gaps, Russia increasingly relies on parallel imports. This involves sourcing banned goods through third countries, often at significantly higher costs. This patchwork approach allows industries to continue running, but ultimately highlights the inherent limits of true self-reliance in a globalized world. Sanctions have undeniably forced adaptation and innovation, but they have not yet resulted in true and complete technological independence. Isolated from the West, Russia has deepened ties with countries outside the sanctions regime. China is now Russia's top economic partner, buying energy and supplying everything from cars to dual-use technology. Iran provides drones and military tech, while North Korea reportedly supplies ammunition. Turkey and the UAE act as intermediaries, re-exporting Western goods to Russia. This network of partners blunts the impact of sanctions and creates new trade routes. These relationships are driven by shared interests and opposition to Western dominance. Economic isolation is only effective if universally applied, a condition that doesn't exist today. Russia's survival depends on this parallel global ecosystem. The world is more multipolar and sanctions less absolute than ever before. Russia's economic adaptation under the weight of sanctions is a complex and closely watched phenomenon. We're seeing a nation attempting to re-engineer its financial systems and trade relationships in real time, a process fraught with challenges and uncertainties. This resilience, however, exposes the limits of Western economic power to fully isolate a major global player. The sanctions, while impactful, haven't brought the Russian economy to its knees as some initially predicted. Its strategy, a multi-pronged approach designed to weather the storm. First, an energy pivot, redirecting exports to new markets. Second, stringent financial controls, stabilizing the ruble and limiting capital flight. Third, a militarized industry, prioritizing defense production and channeling resources into the war effort. And fourth, the cultivation of non-Western alliances, seeking economic and political support from countries like China and India. This combination of factors has prolonged the war in Ukraine and defied initial expectations of a swift Russian economic collapse. Consequently, the world is increasingly splitting into rival economic blocs, each with its own set of priorities and partnerships. This shift is leading to the emergence of new trade routes and alliances, reshaping the global economic landscape. For Russians, the immediate impact is a mixed bag. State spending on social programs and a push for import substitution create a facade of stability. However, these measures mask deeper economic strains, including rising inflation and limited access to goods, ultimately mortgaging the nation's future. For Ukraine, the situation is far more dire. Russia's unexpected resilience translates to a longer, more brutal war, with devastating consequences for the country and its people. Globally, the effects are widespread. Energy price volatility and economic uncertainty ripple outward, impacting economies around the world. Russia's war economy is ultimately a high-stakes gamble, resilient in the short term, but fundamentally brittle in the long run. It remains heavily dependent on high energy prices to sustain its war effort and prop up its economy. Furthermore, it relies on a limited number of key partners for trade and political support. The longer the war drags on without a clear resolution, the more distorted and ultimately dependent Russia's economy becomes, making it increasingly vulnerable to external shocks. The world watches with bated breath, as the long-term consequences of this unprecedented economic experiment continue to unfold, shaping the future of global trade and geopolitics.